Time for another episode of Maybe I'm Rambling today. The topic is the new experimental drug that will help people with Alzheimer's, so let's jump in. U.S. approves first new Alzheimer's drug in 20 years. The first new treatment for Alzheimer's disease for nearly 20 years has been approved by regulators in the United States, paving the way for its use in the UK. Aducanumab targets the underlying cause of Alzheimer's, the most common form of dementia, rather than its symptoms. Charities have welcomed the news of a new therapy for the condition, but scientists are divided over its potential impact because of uncertainty over the trial results. At least 100,000 people in the UK with a mild form of the disease could be suitable for the drug if it were to be approved by the UK regulator. The US Food and Drug Administration, FDA, said there was substantial evidence that aducanumab reduces amyloid beta plaques in the brain, and that this is reasonably likely to predict important benefits to patients. Controversial trial. In March 2019, late-stage international trials of aducanumab, involving about 3,000 patients, were halted when analysis showed the drug, given as a monthly infusion, was not better at slowing the deterioration of memory and thinking problems than a dummy drug. But later that year, the U.S. manufacturer Biogen analyzed more data and concluded the drug did work, as long as it was given in higher doses. The company also said it significantly slowed cognitive decline. Aducanumab targets amyloid, a protein that forms abnormal clumps in the brains of people with Alzheimer's that can damage cells and trigger dementia, including memory and thinking problems, communication issues, confusion. Heading in right direction. Aldo Ceresa, who took part in the trial, first noticed problems differentiating between left and right 10 years ago. After his diagnosis, the 68-year-old, who is originally from Glasgow and now lives in Oxfordshire, close to his family, had to give up his job as a surgeon. Mr. Ceresa took aducanumab for 2 years before the trial was halted, and then had to wait almost as long for another trial at the National Hospital for Neurology and Neurosurgery in London. To begin, I'm quite happy to volunteer, he says. I really enjoy this journey that I'm going through, and obviously the benefits I'm getting from it, which I'm very grateful for. He is convinced the drug has helped him. I feel like I'm not quite as confused. Although it's still there, it's not quite as bad. And I'm just getting that bit more confident now. Mr. Ceresa says his family has noticed improvements too. Before, if I was going to get something, I couldn't remember, where to find things in the kitchen. That has become less of a problem, he says. I haven't caught up to the level that I was before, but I'm heading in the right direction. More than 30 million people around the world are thought to have Alzheimer's, with most aged over 65. For around 500,000 people affected in the UK, those eligible for aducanumab will be mostly in their 60s or 70s and at an early stage of the disease. 2px presentational grey line. Very cautious celebration. We need to keep our feet on the ground. This is not a miracle drug, nor a cure for Alzheimer's, but it is the first treatment which tackles the destructive mechanism in the brain that drives the destruction of neurons. And that makes this a landmark moment. But scientific opinion both here and the United States is divided. While some have welcomed approval, calling it a milestone for millions living with Alzheimer's, others believe the drug will only have marginal benefits. Alzheimer's charities say they will be pressing for an early decision in the UK, but that could take another year. Lastly, we don't know how much aducanumab will cost. It could be tens of thousands of pounds per patient each year. And if approved, access will be limited to those who've had specialist brain scans to confirm their diagnosis. Despite all the caveats, this is moment for very cautious celebration. 2px presentational grey line. Professor Bart de Strooper, director of the UK Dementia Research Institute, said the decision to approve aducanumab marked a hugely significant milestone in the search for treatments for Alzheimer's disease. In the past decade, more than 100 potential Alzheimer's treatments have flopped. But while he hoped it would prove a turning point for millions of people with the condition, he said there were still many barriers to overcome. Professor John Hardy, professor of neuroscience at University College London, said, "We have to be clear that, at best, this is a drug with marginal benefit which will help only very carefully selected patients. Grave error." And Professor Robert Howard, professor of old age psychiatry at UCL, went further, calling the drug's approval a grave error that could derail the ongoing search for meaningful dementia treatments for a decade. He said the FDA had ignored data from the trial which showed no slowing of decline in cognition or function. However, Alzheimer's Society said the drug was promising, but added it was just the beginning of the road to new treatments for Alzheimer's disease. Another charity, Alzheimer's Research UK, said it had written to the Health Secretary Matt Hancock asking the government to prioritise the fast-track approval process for the drug in the UK. Chief Executive Hilary Evans said, "People with dementia and their families have been waiting far too long for life-changing new treatments. It is now essential that regulatory authorities assess the evidence to decide whether they believe the drug is safe and effective for use in the UK." Although many doctors are doubtful of aducanumab's benefits, its US approval could be a huge boost to dementia research, which is traditionally underfunded compared with cancer or heart disease. Here's some more information about dementia. Dementia is a term used to describe the symptoms that occur when there's a decline in brain function. Dementia is not a single disease. There are different diseases that can cause dementia. Many of these diseases are associated with an abnormal buildup of proteins in the brain. This buildup causes nerve cells to function less well and ultimately die. As the nerve cells die, different areas of the brain shrink. Causes of Alzheimer's disease. Alzheimer's disease is the most common type of dementia. Alzheimer's disease is thought to be caused by the abnormal buildup of two proteins called amyloid and tau. Deposits of amyloid, called plaques, build up around brain cells. Deposits of tau form tangles within brain cells. Researchers do not fully understand how amyloid and tau are involved in the loss of brain cells, but research into this is continuing. As brain cells become affected in Alzheimer's, there's also a decrease in chemical messengers, called neurotransmitters, involved in sending messages, or signals, between brain cells. Levels of one neurotransmitter, acetylcholine, are particularly low in the brains of people with Alzheimer's disease. Medicines like donepezil increase levels of acetylcholine and improve brain function and symptoms. These treatments are not a cure for Alzheimer's disease, but they do help improve symptoms. Read more about treatments for dementia. The symptoms that people develop depend on the areas of the brain that have been damaged by the disease. The hippocampus is often affected early on in Alzheimer's disease. This area of the brain is responsible for laying down new memories. That's why memory problems are one of the earliest symptoms in Alzheimer's. Unusual forms of Alzheimer's disease can start with problems with vision or with language. Causes of vascular dementia. Vascular dementia is caused by reduced blood flow to the brain, which damages and eventually kills brain cells. This can happen as a result of narrowing and blockage of the small blood vessels inside the brain. A single stroke, where the blood supply to part of the brain is suddenly cut off, Lots of mini-strokes that cause tiny but widespread damage to the brain. Not everyone who has a stroke will go on to develop vascular dementia. Read more about vascular dementia. Mixed dementia. Because both vascular dementia and Alzheimer's disease are common, especially in older people, they may be present together. This is often called mixed dementia because a mix of these two conditions is thought to be the cause of the dementia. It can be difficult to know how much each cause is contributing to a person's problems. Causes of dementia with Lewy bodies. Lewy bodies are tiny clumps of a protein called alpha-synuclein that can develop inside brain cells. These clumps damage the way the cells work and communicate with each other, and the brain cells eventually die. Dementia with Lewy bodies is closely related to Parkinson's disease and often has some of the same symptoms, including difficulty with movement and a higher risk of falls. Read more about dementia with Lewy bodies. Causes of frontotemporal dementia. This is an important cause of dementia in younger people. It's most often diagnosed between the ages of 45 and 65. It's caused by an abnormal clumping of proteins, including tau, in the frontal and temporal lobes at the front and sides of the brain. The clumping of these proteins damages nerve cells in the frontal and temporal lobes, causing brain cells to die. This leads to shrinking of these areas of the brain. Frontotemporal dementia is more likely to run in families than other, more common causes of dementia. Read more about frontotem rarer causes of dementia. There are many rarer diseases and conditions that can lead to dementia or dementia-like symptoms. These conditions account for only 5% of dementia cases in the UK. They include Huntington's disease, corticobasal degeneration, progressive supranuclear palsy, normal pressure hydrocephalus, mild cognitive impairment. Mild cognitive impairment, MCI, is not a cause of dementia. It's a term used to describe minor memory and thinking problems, such as memory loss, difficulty concentrating, problems with planning and reasoning. These symptoms are not severe enough to cause problems in everyday life. MCI can be caused by an underlying illness, such as depression, anxiety or thyroid problems if the underlying illness is treated or managed. Symptoms of MCI often disappear and cause no further problems. But in some cases, people with MCI are at increased risk of going on to develop dementia, which is usually caused by Alzheimer's disease. Read more about how to prevent dementia. Take part in dementia research. There are many dementia research projects and clinical trials going on around the world, many of which are based in the UK. If you have a dementia diagnosis or are worried about memory problems, you can help scientists understand more about it and develop possible treatments by taking part in research. Carers can also take part, as there are studies into the best ways to care for someone with a dementia diagnosis. That's everything you need to know about Alzheimer's, so don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Peace.